Hello strangers, I'm Mitch and welcome. Before we get into it today, thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. It's been a fun few months of putting content together a little bit more regularly, and it's definitely something I want to keep doing. So if you guys will keep watching, I will keep creating. Now let's get into today's video. My name is Tim, and the story you're about to hear are the events of the worst and most terrifying experience of my life. After more recent occurrences and months of therapy, it's time for me to share what happened. It's been a while, but I'll try to recall the events and articulate them to you the best I can. It started about 9 months ago when I purchased a new house after getting a big promotion. I work in sales and I just got put in charge of everyone in my district, which encompasses 6 different locations and about 30 different employees. This promotion came with a decently sized bonus which enabled me to move out of my apartment and move on up in my life. After looking for a place for about a month, a friend told me about bank auctions and that houses are put up all the time. You can usually get them for a great price. Taking the advice, I looked online and found a couple of homes available. There were listings ranging from small townhouses to large mansions that were a little much for my taste, and a few other houses that weren't bad but didn't quite fit what I wanted. About an hour into my search, I found it. The perfect house for me. It had been posted just that day, a 100-year-old Victorian-style home. It wasn't too big, it wasn't too small. The garden needed some work. There was little grass and a lot of weeds, but I'm fairly good when it comes to yard work and could easily fix it up myself. Of course, there were some other issues inside that needed fixing, but my dad was a handyman and he taught me everything he knew, so I'd be able to fix most, if not all, of what needed fixing. The only issue with the house was that the previous owners had been, well, they were murdered in the house. Now, I'm not a superstitious person, so I wasn't scared of living in a house where people died, but something about this unnerved me. So I decided to do some research into how they died before bidding on the house. It happened a little over a year prior to the bank putting it up, and God was it awful. The family had been murdered by a home invader who tied up the parents and 2 kids, removed all their toe and fingernails, cut off their hands, feet, cut out their tongue, and slit their throats. Finally, the killer used all the parts he removed to make a stew and placed the family at the dinner table and put a serving in a bowl in front of each of them. It took the police over a month to find the guy who did it, and when they went to arrest him, there were complications and he got shot and killed. Justice, if you ask me, but reading about all this was more than enough to send chills down my spine, but it wasn't enough to stop me bidding on the house. I mean, why wouldn't I? I don't believe in ghosts or any of that crap, and the guy who did it had been killed, so really there was no reason not to buy it. Like I said, however, it did freak me out a bit, so I decided that if I do get the house, I'll get a dog to keep me company, and I'd also set up top-notch security as well. Within a week it was over, I'd won the auction. Apparently what happened at that house was scary enough for a lot of people, because I was the only bidder. Kind of makes me wish I didn't put up as much as I did, but I just bought my first house, so I wasn't complaining. I immediately moved out of my apartment and into my new home, which took all of 2 days. Something I didn't think about when buying this house was that because I was living in an apartment, I had considerably less furniture than I did space in the house, meaning that a lot of rooms were empty or had very little in them. This made the house feel a lot bigger than it was, but it also meant I would have extra room for my dog, which I would be picking up tomorrow. Finding a dog was a lot easier than I expected it to be. I originally took to places such as the SPCA, Humane Society, and my local pound. While I was searching on their sites, I remember that a buddy of mine, Joshua, works with an organisation that finds homes for retired military and police dogs, or dogs who didn't quite make the cut to join their elite team of canine forces. After a quick phone call, Joshua was able to set me up with a 7-year-old German Shepherd who worked on a military training facility somewhere overseas. His name was Max. Not the name I would have chosen for him, but still, he needed a home, and I needed a companion. Before I went to pick up Max, I bought him everything he'd need. Quality dog food, a plethora of toys, a doggy bed. I even went as far as installing a dog door into the back door so he could go to the backyard whenever he wanted to. Being slightly paranoid, I went a little over budget and bought a doggy door that's linked to his collar so it only opens right as he's about to walk through it so no other animals or potential burglars can get through and into my house. When the time came to pick up Max, I was so excited. I hadn't had a dog since I was a small child, and it was this small Shih Tzu that we ended up getting rid of when my parents couldn't afford to take care of her anymore. When I got to the shelter, Max was all ready to go. He was excited to meet me and was so well behaved. Being a trained military dog, he already knew all his basic commands like sit and stay. He also knew some really cool tricks like jumping through or over things on command. He could low crawl and even jump nearly 10 feet in the air. We finally got back to my house and I let him loose to explore his new home. I put on his new collar and introduced him to the doggy door and taught him where he was supposed to go to the bathroom. I didn't want to admit it at the time, but living in that house after knowing what happened made me feel uneasy. But having Max there was honestly so much better. And him being a prior military dog provided me with an immense feeling of safety, as though if an intruder were to break in, Max would be able to protect me and take the intruder down. Weeks went by with no issues in the house. Max had adjusted quickly to his new home, and so had I. Slowly but surely, the projects around the house were getting done, like fixing the railing on the staircase, some squeaky doors, and fresh grass for the front yard. It wasn't until my second month living there that things started to happen. Small things at first, like I'd leave my dirty dishes from dinner in the sink because I'd be too tired to clean them. But in the morning, I'd find the sink empty and the dishes clean and put away. At first, I just attributed it to my common forgetfulness, but then it got downright scary. The next thing to happen in this house caused me to call the police, who, of course, didn't believe me, as there were no signs of forced entry and none of my alarms had gone off, but I swear to you, it wasn't Max or I. One morning, I woke up and did my morning routine. Went downstairs, put coffee on, I put a couple of waffles in the toaster, and went to the bathroom to do my business. What I saw when I went in that bathroom, it was the third worst thing to happen during the time I lived there. I was so tired I almost didn't see the blood at first. It was all over the floor and in the bathtub. Sitting in the bathtub was the lifeless corpses of not 1, 2, but 3 raccoons. The sight of it made me sick. I spent the next 15 minutes profusely vomiting before I could even think about what to do next. At first, calling the police seemed like the stupid idea. Why are they going to care about some dead raccoons, I thought. But obviously someone had done this. And there was no way it was Max. He had been such a well-behaved dog, and we had no issues whatsoever, but like I said, the police didn't believe me. PTSD, they said. They said my dog probably had PTSD, and it caused him to do this. I mean, I get it, there were no signs that anyone had broken in, but Max couldn't have done this. I simply refused to believe it, and if the police wouldn't help me, then I'd just have to step it up with the security at my house. That day, I called in sick to work. After spending 2 hours cleaning up the mess, I went to Best Buy and bought some high-quality security cameras, the kind that link to your phone, have lights, night vision, live stream, and record. I placed one watching the front door, one watching the front yard, one for the backyard, and one for the side door to the garage. Additionally, I also got some solar-powered motion lights and placed them in various places throughout my front and backyard. The cameras didn't cover all potential points of entry, but those cameras are expensive, so I did what I could. Either way, even if this didn't cover all of my property, it would definitely make it harder for anyone to break in. 2 weeks passed without any issues. I would look at the security feed for the night every day at 4 times the speed just to check for anything unusual, and every night for 2 weeks nothing happened. But then something did happen. I was watching the feed for the night before when the motion light went on in the backyard. I couldn't see anything at first, making me think it was an animal. But then, peeking from behind the tree in my backyard, I swear I saw a pair of bright green eyes staring directly at the camera. The light shined off of them like the sun off a mirror. It was unmistakable. There was someone watching from my backyard. Immediately I called the police and they said to come by the station with a copy of the video so they could take a look at it. I tried to express that I was not comfortable leaving my house unattended with this unknown person around, but they said they wouldn't send an officer, meaning I'd have to lock this place up tight before heading out. After triple checking that every door was locked and window was latched, I finally felt comfortable going to the station. It was already 6 PM, so I went ahead and filled up Max's bowl with water and gave him his dinner and went on my way. It's a 15-minute drive there, but it took me about 30 because I kept stopping to check the feed from my cameras out of paranoia. There was nothing. Once I finally got to the station, they immediately sat me down with one of the sergeants there, Sergeant Hodge, and I showed him the footage, told him about what happened a couple of weeks prior with the raccoons and all the weird things that kept happening around the house. This was definitely enough for him to take an interest, especially after watching the footage. He agreed that there was someone behind that tree watching, and after some discussing, Sergeant Hodge decided to place a squad car outside my house to keep watch. We discussed a few other details, and I headed back to my house with the squad car also on its way. I'm not sure if having the car outside my house made me feel safer or not, but it made me feel better about sleeping there at least. After getting home, I checked on Max, checked all the doors and windows again, looked in every room and closet, and after I finally felt there was no one in the house, I went to make myself some dinner and watch some TV. I was far too tired to make anything real, so I just put a Hungry Man dinner in the microwave and sat down on the couch. There wasn't anything good on cable, so I went straight to Netflix to binge watch Parks and Rec for the 4th time. Halfway through the episode, I got chills down my spine. Someone was watching me. I don't know where from, but I could feel eyes glaring at me. Everyone has had that feeling where someone's watching them, but this was intense. Not wanting whoever was watching me to know I was onto them, I got up to put my plastic tray in the trash and tried to slyly look around to see if I could see anything in my house. There was nothing. Started to feel like I was just paranoid, but then when I was walking back to my couch, I glanced out the window to my backyard, and as I did, the motion lines went off, and I saw him. He was at the edge of the light, so I couldn't see any defining features, just a silhouette and those green eyes staring at me. As soon as the man realized I saw him, he bolted and hopped the fence. I didn't move. I just kept watching the yard to make sure the man wasn't coming back. After about 5 minutes of standing there, I grabbed my phone to call one of the 2 officers in the car outside, Officer Peterson. I informed him of what happened, and he and the other officer immediately went to investigate the area. They came to my door 30 minutes later and said that whoever was there was long gone by now, and they found nothing in the immediate surrounding area. It took some reassurance for me to be convinced, but they finally got me to let them go back to their car to keep watch. I didn't think I was going to be able to sleep naturally tonight, so I took a couple of melatonin and went to bed. I don't know exactly when I fell asleep, but I can tell you when I woke up. 1:53 AM. It was the loud sound like a window breaking. Immediately I tried calling Officer Peterson, but he didn't answer. Not knowing what else to do, I called Max to me, grabbed the bat I'd been keeping by my bed and went to see what was going on. Every creak of the house with every step I took made my body ache with fear. If someone were in my house, they would know I was awake and that I was walking around trying to find them. The stairs were the worst part. The bottom floor was completely dark and anyone could be down there waiting to grab me at the bottom or grab me from the banister going down. It was nerve-wracking going down there, but after what felt like an eternity of walking down the stairs, I made it to the light switch. I flipped the switch and quickly scanned the room to find nothing. There was no one here. Every room on the bottom floor was empty. All the windows were completely intact, and there was no broken glass anywhere. I decided to look out to the street to see if the squad car was still there and if the officers were awake since they didn't answer my call. When I looked out there, the car was there, but both officers were not. I don't know what was going on, but this was not good. Immediately, I closed all the curtains on the first floor and went to check all the locks. First, I checked the back door. As I did, I peeked out the window just to be safe. There was nothing in sight. Next, I checked the front doors, and as I did, someone started banging on the door, which caused me to jump back in fear. I was overcome with adrenaline and held my bat tight, prepared to hit whoever was there. I opened the door quickly as I pulled back for a swing. Officer Peterson threw his hands in the air. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, it's just me." I'm not sure who was more scared, me or him. He told me someone had thrown a rock through the window of their car from the woods across the street. They'd chased the culprit away and there was nothing to worry about. I was too tired to argue and let him get back to his car, and I went back to bed. After about an hour of sleep, I drowsily woke up to the sound of Max leaving the room, presumably to go to the bathroom, which he often did. He was gone for like 10 minutes before I heard the bell on his collar, indicating he was coming back to the room. He laid next to the bed on the floor and started licking my hand, which usually meant he wanted attention and to play, but it was nearly 3 a.m, so play would have to wait until the morning. Maybe 5 more minutes later, I heard the pitter-patter of Max in the hallway. He was walking around again, which wouldn't have been an issue if Max hadn't been lying next to me, still licking my hand. I felt my heart drop, paralysed with fear. If Max is next to me, then who was that out in the hallway? Not a single muscle in my body could move as I waited for whoever it was to come into my room and do whatever it was they were going to do. I didn't think I could be more scared than I was in that moment. I was wrong. The pitter-patter from the hallway got closer and closer until the door started to open. It was Max. It was just Max coming back to the room after wandering around from an inability to sleep. I felt the colour come back to my face and I was finally able to relax. That is, until the inevitable realization hit me. If Max was in the hallway, then what or who was licking my hand? It was at this moment that I was the most scared I'd ever been in my life, and this was the second worst thing to happen to me in this house. If I thought the fear was paralysing before, then this was like being in a coma. It hadn't just been my body that was frozen, but my mind too. I couldn't move or think. I had no idea what to do. I just laid there. Couldn't figure out a scenario where I got out of this alive, so I just laid there and tried to convince myself it wasn't real. It was just a really bad dream caused by all that's been happening lately. You might think this is weird or insane or whatever, but I fell back asleep. I must have been able to convince myself it wasn't real because I slept for the rest of the night. When I woke up, I almost didn't remember what had happened and that someone was in my room. It took all of 10 seconds for it all to come back to me, which bolted me awake as I scanned the room. No one was there, but Max was. Max's body was on the floor, dead. On the wall, written in blood above his body, were the words, "Be glad you stayed in bed." I ran out of the house to the squad car with waterfalls of tears running down my face. They couldn't understand a word I was saying. I was completely hysterical. After they finally got me to catch my breath and explain what happened, they drew their weapons and went inside the house. 20 minutes passed and they came back out saying it was all clear and that any intruder was gone. We all went to the station to figure out what our next move would be. Sergeant Hodge was waiting for us when we got there and he was pissed at the officers for letting this happen. He asked me to take a seat while he took the officers to his office to talk to them. They were back there a while, leaving me with time to think about what happened. This was the most dangerous thing because there was the begging question, how he got in the house. All the doors were locked and the windows were latched, so how did he get in? Then I remembered the cameras. I pulled out my phone and checked last night's feed. After a while, I was able to narrow down that he entered between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. I watched at 2 times speed and it was all clear until 2:43 a.m. Out of nowhere, a face appeared right in front of the camera in the backyard, once again just staring right at me. He had a wide, almost inhumane smile and those green eyes. It was a face I'd never forget. Finally, Sergeant Hodge came back and I showed him the video and the face of my intruder. He was taken aback by this, not because it scared him, but because he knew who it was. Apparently the guy who killed the family that lived in the house prior to me wasn't killed by the shot he took while under pursuit and got away. To save face and help the general public feel safer, the police lied. I was furious for obvious reasons. Had the truth been out there, I probably wouldn't have bought the house to begin with. Like I said in the beginning, it's been about 9 months since that night, and I haven't been back to the house since. I sent the movers to collect all my things and had them unloaded at a storage facility I'm renting a space at. I've been staying at a motel for a while now. I finally started to feel safe again until last night. Last night, something happened which has led me to share my story, as I don't know how much longer I'll be alive. I was double checking the 3 locks on my door when I felt the need to look outside and make sure everything was fine. I peeked through the curtain. maybe 100 feet away, hiding behind a car with those green eyes. They're staring right at me. Well, that's going to do it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Again, if you haven't done so, please subscribe, leave some sort of comment, maybe hit the thumbs up button, and come back next time for more creepy content.